You gave Damn a 7, but you gave Flavor of the Month album X a 7 or above? Let's break it down. So, Anthony Fantano, the internet's busiest music nerd of the Needle Drop YouTube channel, has a huge meme following him around for most of the year now about the fact that he gave the album Damn a 7 out of 10. And people often bring up that score in comparison to other albums that he reviewed that he gave either that score or higher, and ask, you gave Damn a 7, but this or whatever. And it became such a huge meme that now everybody does it about everything, regardless of sincerity. But why? Why Damn specifically? Why did this album create this kind of impact, more so than any other highly rated or highly appreciated album that Fantano gave a lower score to, as this is pretty common practice? What I think it is has to do with a difficulty in reconciling how Fantano thinks of his reviews, or how he at least conducts his reviews, and how other people look at them from the outside. One of the biggest numbers that's really been confronting people is his score for Lil Pump. He gave Lil Pump's debut mixtape a 7, which he had also given Damn. A lot of people are like, what in the flying fuck? How could you possibly do that? And I think that they feel that way because Lil Pump feels like a flavor of the moment artist. Lil Pump is someone who's blown up through SoundCloud memes, who's, just sort of showed up on the scene. Some young guy who makes dumbass meme music. And even if his mixtape is good, even if every song sounds good and is a memorable, catchy track, how long will that album be in rotation? How long will Lil Pump be an album that people keep returning to versus Damn? I think this disconnect is why people can't get into the headspace of these scores. I gave Damn a 7 as well. But that's because I don't give a lot of albums a score of a 7 or higher. I don't have as broad of a taste as Anthony Fantano does. But I also feel weird about that score, and I think I might raise it now because Damn is an album I haven't been able to stop thinking about. It's an album that worms its way into my consciousness, and even if not every song is amazing, even if there were songs that I outright disliked from the album, which is not really the case, there's a couple of songs that I think are not as good as the other ones, and I don't think any of the album quite reaches the heights that we got at the best moments of To Pimp a Butterfly, or the best moments of Good Kid, Mad City. But nonetheless, this album has so much to chew on. It has so much emotional depth, which is another meme phrase that comes from the Hip Hop DX channel because of the way that Rude Jude always refers to what he seeks in great hip hop music is emotional depth. And that is exactly what Damn has. But emotional depth is not something that I think can be fully appreciated in just a review. Because a review, in the way that Fantano does them, is not necessarily a first impressions of an album. He listens to it usually for probably a week, if that. He gives it a good few go-throughs, enough to form an opinion of the quality of the music. Is the message saying something, yes or no? Are these lyrics conveying something interesting? Is there stuff that you can think about? And the answer is yes. But how much does that affect, how good the album is to just listen to? That's what's going into that review score. But it's really over the distance of time that the emotional depth and the resonance starts to seep in, that you start to really understand the album. And I think that you can tell from an early point listening to Damn, this is not an album you're just going to stop thinking about, or that you're going to listen to 10 times and get sick of. With Lil Pump, you get that sense that while in that first week of listening to it, it might be a 7, and it might be just as much fun to have listened to for that week as Kendrick Lamar's Damn was for that week. But is it going to be that much fun to listen to in a year? Are any of the lyrics going to worm their way into your mind and get you thinking about them in a year? Now, Fantano does not review his albums based on what they are going to be in a year. He reviews them based on what they were in that week that he spent with them. Sometimes his opinions change on albums, sometimes they don't. But you also have to remember that Anthony Fantano is constantly listening to more shit, and even if he revisits an album over the course of a year, he's not going to probably listen to it as much as anybody who really likes the album. Because the average music listener does not constantly listen to new music. The average music listener isn't just taking in absolutely everything just to find things they might like, and they probably don't like as many things. Like me, I usually end a year with less than 10 albums that I really liked, and I do actively seek out new music, you know? But like there's so little that actually resonates with me that those 10 albums I've probably listened to well over 50 times by the end of the year. Anthony Fantano can put together a list of his top 50 albums of the year, and I would be shocked if he's listened to any of them more than 25 times, at the absolute most. And he's got a lot of other music on his mind, so he's not constantly thinking about these ones. Now, if you're someone who, whether you thought it was Kendrick Lamar's best album or the best album you've ever heard, is nonetheless your favorite album of the year, Lil Pump's not doing anything for you, you know. You keep listening to that album over and over and over again, keep getting more out of it because it has that depth. It has that amount of things to process and think about. There are songs on there, every time I listen to Lust, I think about even more stuff, like even more of what's present in the lyrics, you know. It's a song with so much going on in it, where it tells these different types of stories across the course of its run. Thinking about fucking, what the hell is the name of Fear? Like, Lust and Fear are both songs that, like, I spend an inordinate amount of time thinking about, and every time I listen to them, I pick out some other line that I get stuck on than what I did before, you know? Like, a song like Humble might not have as many, like, wham lines that I'm going to keep thinking about, but it's a super fun song to listen to over and over and over again. You know, it's a song that I'll keep returning to after, you know, the end of the year and, like, have in my rotation always. Lil Pump is something I feel like is going to get replaced, you know? There's a lot of music that comes out that's fun for a little while, and then you just kind of, the next fun thing comes along, and the old fun thing, you don't even really care about it anymore, you know? It's like, kind of like a Turn Down for What or something. Like, that was a really fun song when that song came out. I was into Turn Down for What, but I put it on now, and it's fine, you know? But it doesn't have that luster it had when it was new, when it was like, oh man, someone made something like this, you know? Lil Pump is new and fresh, but like in a year, it's not going to be impressive anymore. Damn is going to hold up. It's going to stand the test of time. It might only be a 7 out of 10, but it will be a 7 out of 10 forever. Or it might be an 8 after a year. It's never going to depreciate in value the way that Lil Pump might. And this is why I think people recognize this. Like, I think people listen to Damn and they go, isn't this obviously something that, like, regardless of whether, you know, you think Love and Pride aren't the best songs, which I think Love is a fucking fantastic song, but, you know, whether or not Pride, I meant God. Whether you think Love and God are good or bad songs, you know, these are songs that like the album as a whole, like, even if it just had DNA, like, just having DNA, like, alone makes the whole album better than the Lil Pump album, you know? Because, like, that one song is gonna be with me forever. It's always gonna be a killer song, no matter what. You know, like, that alone makes it a better album. And I also think, you know, this is another part of the disconnect, is that for most people, they don't need to love the entire album to consider it a great album or a favorite. For me personally, a lot of my favorite albums are ones that have songs I don't like on them, but the songs I do like, I like more than the entire rest of music. You know, like, you could play me an album where every song is okay, and then you can play me an album that has, like, 3 incredible songs, and the rest of the album's dog shit. And I'd rather listen to that, because I will keep listening to those 3 incredible songs forever, whereas I will never listen to the mediocre album. So to me, as long as the album has great songs, it's automatically a higher score than, like, something that's, you know, I think this is how a lot of people think of music, and I mean, these days most people don't even think about albums in general, but, you know, I think that this is, again, this all contributes to why we have this issue. And even on songs, you know, some of the things that Fantano said about that album, like when he talks about Loyalty and how it's an album, it's a song that is very clearly like the single, you know, and it's not the most well-structured song on the album. It kind of meanders a little bit, you know, the sample gets a little repetitive. I appreciate all these problems, but then I'm listening to it and I get to Rihanna's rap verse, and she's got like one of the most interesting flows I've heard all year. You know, like she's got such a weird, creative flow on that song that I've never heard before. And I think about that and I'm like, that flow alone is worth more than most of rap music that's going to come out this year. Like just hearing the way she pulls off these certain lines, you know, like, I don't know, that to me is like, is more worthwhile than a whole album of decent music. I think I'm repeating myself at this point, but yeah, this is why I think the damn question has come to mind so much. It's just a matter of we're thinking of this in the long term. Fantano's reviews are not necessarily meant to stand the test of time. They're not meant to be reviews that you continually go back to years later because they're written about that first week with the album. They're not written about the album after a year. They're not written about, you know, later after time. And Fantano's not really interested in doing that kind of stuff. He's interested in covering albums at the height of their excitement as he just keeps blistering through them, getting to the next album, the next album, the next album. And, you know, it's just a matter of most people don't listen to music the same way that he does, and most people would have a different scale, I think. Yeah, join me in another video sometime. Subscribe. I don't know what to say. Why am I still talking?